They will hate that you're hearing this. We're launching the Frontline Report, a new series covering what MSM won't. From the truth behind the Washington crash out to unexplained blackouts in Europe, we've got it all, so buckle up because this is where the real stories finally get told.
A report has finally been released regarding the Washington, D.C. helicopter crash in January, and let's just say it's not looking too good for DEI or feminism. Many of you remember this. This was this bizarre situation where a Black Hawk military helicopter collided head-on directly with a passenger jet.
We now have more details on the crash, and it's been revealed that not only was the Black Hawk flying too high, but in the final seconds before the crash, the pilot failed to heed a directive from her co-pilot, an Army flight instructor, to change course.
You heard that right. The infamous DC crash, which the MSM and the left immediately used to attack the president, is now being seen in a completely different light. At the time, they accused Trump of using the tragedy to advance his political agenda, claiming his comments were insensitive and opportunistic. But new reports tell a very different story, one they're conveniently ignoring now. It turns out the pilot failed to heed her flight instructor's warning just 15 seconds before the crash. So it wasn't a mechanical failure. Wasn't because of staffing shortages or the firing of flight controllers. It was human error, which could be attributed to the broader issues. That's why you didn't see anyone talk about the new detail, and they'd prefer to stick to their original outrage instead of admitting they jumped to the wrong conclusion. Over in the UK, things are getting even more absurd. The Parliament held a hearing with the creator of Netflix's Adolescence to get his take on misogyny among young people.
It wasn't the outside influence, it was the influence on social media amongst friends that was the biggest influence. It wasn't a named influencer, for example.
No, there were lots of things that make up Jamie's complicated brain, and there's lots of things, if I was to describe to you what Jamie's brain looked like, it would take me 9 years to describe it, because he's a complicated mess of things, as we all are. And so all these things play a role in his head. The social media thing I thought was particularly interesting because there were ideas within it. And when I talk to kids, which is the crucial thing, there are ideas within it that really troubled me.
To give a bit of context, Adolescence is a Netflix series that gained major attention in the UK for its portrayal of so-called toxic masculinity. The media praised it, activists jumped on board, and politicians took notice. But here's the thing, the entire show's fictional. It's not based on a true story. No real events, no real people, it's made up. UK lawmakers seem to love the message so much they brought the creator into Parliament to discuss the state of young men in society. Yeah, seriously, they're using a scripted Netflix show as the foundation for real political debate, and worse, they're proposing legislation that could further restrict speech under the banner of fighting misogyny. The country is basically a parody of its past self, and it makes you wonder how they were a worldwide empire at one point. Speaking of strange developments in Europe, let's move on to the major power outage that recently hit several countries, which you probably heard about but haven't gotten the full story.
Spain remains in a state of emergency tonight after one of the biggest electrical blackouts in Europe's history. This is a live look at Madrid's main train station. It's just gone 10 a.m. Many of these passengers have spent the night sleeping on the ground.
It feels very chaotic and it feels very frantic, Yalda. We're coming live to you now off a small, very tiny fraction of 4G that we've managed to find within a very tiny segment of Madrid airport. And it does feel, as I say, very chaotic.
Sarah, what's a 20-hour blackout like?
It feels pretty unsettling, that's for sure. It certainly shows you how reliant we are on our phones and the internet. And really, this in part of Madrid, the north of Madrid, was like many in the rest of the capital. People were scurrying around to try to find radios, old-fashioned radios with batteries, trying to find out exactly what was going on. And they didn't know what was the cause of that power outage and how long it would last.
This was one of the biggest stories in Europe last week, where massive blackouts hit Spain, Portugal, and parts of France, leaving millions without power for nearly an entire day. At first, there was speculation that it could have been a cyber attack or human error, but as more details came out, experts started pointing to another cause. Without getting too deep into the technical side, here's the key issue. Spain relies heavily on solar and wind energy. According to experts, the blackout likely happened because the system became overloaded and couldn't maintain balance. When demand and supply aren't properly managed, especially with energy sources that fluctuate like wind and solar, the whole grid could collapse. Andre Merlin, who is the founder and former CEO of France's grid operator, RTE, explained it clearly in an interview saying, quote, 2/3 of Spain's electricity production was made up of non-controllable resources. These non-controllable resources don't contribute to the stability of the internal electrical system. In other words, if net zero policies keep pushing on reliable energy, we might find ourselves literally back in the dark ages. For the final story of the day, we have a congressman for the president's impeachment, and nothing's going to prepare you for what you're about to witness.
This is Congressman Shri Thanedar. Donald Trump has already done real damage to our democracy, but defying a unanimous 9-0 Supreme Court ruling, that has to be the final straw. It's time we impeach Donald J. Trump. The court said the wrongfully deported Kilmer Garcia must be allowed to return and receive due process. Trump ignored it. He ignored the Constitution. He ignored the very checks and balances that keep our democracy intact. This isn't an isolated incident. It's part of a dangerous, deliberate pattern. That's why today I introduced a resolution to impeach Donald J. Trump.
That's House Representative Shri Thanedar, and his speech quickly went viral on X. For most people, this is probably the first time they heard his name, which is why many believe the whole thing was just a move to gain attention. In today's internet age, when someone makes headlines, it doesn't take long before people start digging into their past. And that's exactly what happened here, as old reports began resurfacing alleging that Shri mistreated animals at his former company. According to what's been circulating after his business filed for bankruptcy, they found themselves in the middle of lawsuits with Bank of America and some claims, including abandoning 118 beagles inside his pharmaceutical testing lab when it went bankrupt. Trump also saw Thanedar's impeachment move and took a jab at him during one of his rallies.
And today they did it again. Some guy that I'd never heard of. John James, is he a congressman, this guy? He said, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to start the impeachment of Donald Trump. What the hell did I do? Here we go again. They want to impeach me. This lunatic, he was up. Actually, I had the television way down, and I said to our great First Lady, listen, did I just hear I was being impeached again? We're getting good at this, though. No, they've gone totally crazy. These people, and you know what? They've totally lost their confidence, too. They can't even tell a lunatic like this dumb guy that said it. And then you have the other one that's always with the cane. He's always impeaching. He raises his cane.
That is so funny. And I kind of think his last name sounds like a transformer. Maybe just me. He's hitting two birds with one stone, though. I think most of us had a similar reaction when we first saw Shri pop up on our feed, and I'm still not sure who he is or what he does. Maybe a Decepticon? But I'd love to know which one of these stories was your favorite, so let me know in the comments down below. And if you want your friends to get their coverage from an independent source, like me, please share the video with them. It helps a ton. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.